Big time bantamweight tilt coming up this weekend. We have Russian Ronda, Irina Alekseeva looking to welcome into the UFC. It's wow! Papa don't make no mess! You know, Papa don't take no mess, Matt.
Yes.
I mean, Papa don't take no mess by James Brown. It's like Melissa No Mess Mullins Dixon. Formerly Mullins, now Dixon, the former IMMAF European finalist. She wasn't able to get it done in that tournament back in 2019. But for No Mess, Matt, I don't know if the nickname comes from Papa Don't Take No Mess by James Brown, or she's just a fan of the domer industry. I don't know what that one's about. But when you look at it for No Mess Mullins, a very interesting dive when you watch these Melissa Dixon fights. And the same can be said for both of these women. But there's a lot of different handoffs that I could kind of start off with. I think this fight is wild that it's even taking place in the UFC, and this is the reason being. For Irina Alekseeva comes into the UFC, and we slagged her big time. Russian Ronda, Irina Alekseeva, and Matt, when I went down through this one, I have no idea why this is even a UFC fight, because if you look at it, for Irina Alekseeva, I mean, there's articles out there, she signed with Invicta, then she signed with Bellator, she had a fight. Then she got released by Bellator. The UFC scooped her up. They signed her back in August of last year. So they went with a 4-1 fighter. And we're going to bring up her record. I'm going to show it to the folks out there on Topology. She is 4-1 now.
You mean scooped her up in like a Rule 5 draft kind of sense?
Yeah, we're going to see if this prospect works out. And if they can't kick it on the 40-man, we're sending them back over to their original team. But when you look at the overall record, Matt, the accolades, they precede her. They're good, and they will kind of really hit you off the hop. But so you look at it for Irina Alekseeva, she beats Tainara Gareva, and that's by refusal to fight. That's by refusal to fight. The next fight against Shakira Rakimonova by decision. That's against an 0-2 fighter. Then she fights Zetia Shaftor at RCC 6 back in 2019. First round armbar against a fighter that's 5-5. She goes up against
5-5 when you're 2-0 though isn't terrible.
She goes up against Lilia Kazak, who had 5 times more experience than her. She was 8-6-2, and in that one she gets out punched, she gets out grappled. She struggled against a fighter who she seemed to have a size advantage over, even though at the start of the fight she looked like she was going to finish Kazak. She kind of blew it in the first round, second round, third round, did not go her way. And then she took on Bellator's Stephanie Page, who was 5-2 back in 2021, wins that fight by decision. She weighed 129.9 pounds for flyweight, and the entire fight, the commentary team said, I don't know why she didn't make the weight. Boy, she looks really slow in this third round. Boy, it wasn't going very well. So again, I know I seem incredibly negative off the hop about this prospect who's 4-1, who's almost 33 years old. It's a really, really strange signing.
It is, but at least let me play devil's advocate for 2 seconds. We're not going to see her in the areas she's worst at in a lot of this fight. At least that's not what I think. So for Irina, if she is able to translate some of that judo success over into the UFC, then I don't think this is going to make for the worst fight ever. I do agree with you. If you stack all of her skills up on top of each other, are they going to equal this crazy high tower? No, but I do think we will see the highest accentuation of her skill set.
Yeah, so for Irina Alekseeva, let's give her flowers. A 3-time Russian judo champion, silver medalist. She's a Russian European gold medalist at the Sambo World Championships, a 4-time Russian hand-to-hand combat champ, a 2-time European hand-to-hand combat champ, a world champ in hand-to-hand combat. And if you do consider that, I read that from an article in 2019, it was a Sherdog won by Elena Katerskaya. So Elena putting in the work. But when you do look at it overall, for Alekseeva, she trains out of Rati Team, which is also known as Ratiborets, which is the gym that you're going to find Roman Kopylov out of, as well as Oleg Olenikov. But if I do look at Alekseeva, she will kind of strike to clinch. She throws massive looping hooks with her head completely out on the center line.
Leaves herself defenseless.
She is there to get hit. And wild looping striker, no jab was another part of my notes in watching these fights. But when I considered it for Alekseeva, she started her career at featherweight. She moved it down to flyweight. She missed flyweight. Now we're up at bantamweight. So we slagged Irina Alekseeva big time. She comes in at 140 pounds. She's got Maria Agapova energy. And then all of a sudden, she's just like switching her stances, throwing body kicks, throwing wide looping punches to the head. And then when a takedown doesn't happen against one Stephanie Edgar, Alekseeva just rolls into a knee bar. And she's able to pop that knee. And Matt, sometimes that doesn't work. Like we saw last weekend, UFC Vegas 80. You keep going for knee bars out of shoot the box, and Mateus Mendonça, you get knocked out and woken up by a punch. But Alekseeva gets the win there. 140 pounds her last time out. For Melissa Dixon, she got a couple of wins over with Aries FC. She got that win over a big-time name, Matt, Zaleshnikova, who's supposed to fight on this card. Daria Zaleshnikova, who's supposed to fight Tainara Lisboa. It all rhymes. But Zaleshnikova out of the matchup against Lisboa. And Melissa Dixon, she was able to get that win over Zaleshnikova, but not without a ton of punishment at the start of that first round. But then, if you look at it, again, the Zaleshnikova fight was supposed to set her up for a title fight against Gisele Mohea, and the fight falls out with Aries. And there's not a lot of conversation around it, but Melissa Dixon threw it out there on her Instagram, and she said she missed weight by 1.2 kilograms, so she was out of the fight. So, little cheeky by me, I put the little 137.6, doing the math with the kgs to pounds, but all this to be said, both of these women missed weight in their last fights, and Melissa Dixon is legitimately getting a UFC shot off of missing weight in a fight that fell out.
And I have a really hard time with this matchup, right? Because when you talk about a lot of really talented grapplers who have submissions off their back, a lot of those fighters are happy to take that position, right? Gerald Mearshardt's an example that, again, we probably use far too much at this point, but think about a lot of Gerald Mearshardt's success and the amounts of just awful times he's ever had in the UFC. He will play a lot off his back, right? We used to have a term known as the Louis Smolka theory, where sometimes you could be a fighter who's almost a little bit too comfortable in that position to where you're losing too many rounds and not threatening with enough off your back. Here's the weird thing that I have with this matchup. Melissa Dixon loves to be in that top position with a lot of ground and pound, and she does do a good job with her own wrestling. Alekseeva is going to be more than happy to grapple off of her back, so I do think that at some point, and again, if this is 15 minutes of striking, I don't think a lot of people are going to just become Melissa Dixon fans.
I think the contrary, because
unless Irina goes in there and just starts keep on throwing very hard.
This has to be said. I mean, we said it for Alekseeva coming into the UFC. She'll throw the kitchen sink at you, get really tired, and we're surprised that some of her wins were wins. For Melissa Dixon, not a lot of head movement. She eats right hands like it's going out of style. But for Dixon, the big thing is she likes to clinch up if things aren't going well or if they're going well. She gets the takedown and she will ride out entire rounds on top with really good top pressure and great ground and pound.
And that's why I bring up all of those BJJ specialists that I've talked about in the past. If Alekseeva does, let's just say spends 15 complete minutes on her back, right? Every second of that fight, you're still going to be worried she's going to be able to hit that Hail Mary, land a submission, and end the fight regardless of what the scorecards are. And that's why I have such a hard time with this fight, because Dixon could have that top position for 14 minutes and 59 seconds. And for all of that time, up until that last second, I do think Alekseeva, unless she is completely just gassed due to her striking and just trying to get out of compromising positions, I think she's going to have that chance to throw that Hail Mary and get the submission win. And that's why I do have a hard time with this fight. But I will say, Dixon, if she's able to get that top spot, I don't think it's going to be a one and done type situation. Like you said, she is very heavy from that top position, and she'll be active too. And if she's able to land consistent ground and pound against Alekseeva, Irina's not just going to be as comfortable, maybe even pulling guard or just working off her back from that position.
And no mess, again, you got to go down through it. 5-4 as an amateur. She fought Ivana Petrovic, who ended up becoming the Irish champ, and she was able to kind of parlay that into the UFC to a loss in the debut. But if you look at it for Dixon, I mean, as a pro, 5-0, she's continually gotten these TKO wins. You look at the level of competition, I mean, you add up the wins and the losses, 17-6 is a combined opponent record. It's still not that great, especially if you consider, her last win, I guess that's the one that vaults her over the top. She beats Daria Zaleshnikova for the first half of that round. She's looking for the counter left hook, but she keeps eating right hands, and she is busted up. But then as the round goes on, in a little bit of a scramble, she ends up on top, and I thought the referee was going to call the end of the round, but all of a sudden he's waving it off. He's calling it the end of the fight. In her fight against Zovak, in that one, she's also walking out to the same song in both Aries fights, Dancing in the Moonlight. So expect that in the Vegas confines. A lot of people just grooving to the tune. Again, not walking out to James Brown, so I really don't know where No Mess comes from. But the biggest point that I have out of this, and the other one, I guess you can find her regional fights that aren't with Aries. They're all on YouTube. So just look up Melissa Dixon or Melissa Mullins. But I'm not a big fan of MMA comedy Shane Gillis. Sometimes he gets me, sometimes he doesn't. But the one thing that I can agree with is
MMA comedy Shane Gillis?
Yeah.
He talks about MMA?
MMA people tend to like Shane Gillis, so that's where we're going to pull things
okay, but
together.
I don't think he's an MMA comic.
I guess he's not Adam Hunter. He doesn't have a special out there on Fight Pass.
I know exactly what joke you're about to say.
You know where I'm coming from. I'm watching a lot of football. I'm watching a lot of MMA.
Are you big into history, Chris?
And I picked up a book the other day, Matt, Revolutionary, George Washington at War. And I want to read you an excerpt, where the Shane Gillis joke is. Matt, they're talking. The author's talking about the Continental Army and how the colonies were pushing back against everybody that was coming in and trying to take what they wanted as theirs. Meanwhile, they're training at the key elements of tactical maneuver, moving from column to line and vice versa, remained at best sketchy and haphazard. Both of these women have that problem like the Continental Army. Their striking defense is such a sketchy and haphazard thing that you have to watch out for.
And a win in this fight still doesn't help me determine the ceiling of either fighter.
But am I becoming a Republican?
You might be.
Wrong country.
Here's the weird thing. Again, I brought it up for all the reasons I said. Dixon could be on top the whole entire fight, and I'm still going to be concerned she's going to get finished at any point throughout it. Remember when Wonderboy fought Darren Till? It was one of the worst fights of all time. But remember watching it live? It wasn't that boring. Like, I've told people this before, and they don't believe me. Watching it live, it wasn't as boring as you would assume, because the anticipation was there. You were always worried that either guy was going to land that big shot, and I think the grappling sequences in this matchup is going to mirror that fight a little bit. So maybe selling this fight as being Darren Till versus Wonderboy Thompson as grappling isn't the greatest way to sell it, but I do think it's going to have a similar vibe to it.
Melissa Dixon opened an underdog at a plus 102. She's a minus 150 favorite right now. We have a look at the Topology votes. Surprised to us as they are to you. I'm going to say over under 65% Dixon in this one.
I think it's going to be the other way.
It is, no, but it's slightly under. 979 total votes, 62% Dixon, 77% have her to win by decision. For the 38% that have Alekseeva, 50% by decision, 38% by submission. And when I look at a Melissa Dixon fight, Matt, it could be Zalezhnikova, it could be the Aris fights, the fights in the regional scene. It doesn't matter who she's fighting. She did fight one woman way back when, and the nickname was for her opponent, Mistelli, the housewife. The housewife. Wow. That's just a shot right in the gut. But when you do look at these Dixon fights, she eats strikes to close the distance to get the fight down to the mat. I can see her struggling trying to do that against somebody who's a hand-to-hand champ, a sambo champ, a judo champ. This is wild. I'm taking Irina Alekseeva in this matchup as
I took a slight underdog in last week's fights on the prelims.
I don't like Irina Alekseeva. And I don't really like Melissa Dixon as far as high ceilings in this division. But I think for Alekseeva, unless things go really south and we see that cardio wane like we did.
Or she weighs in at 142 on Friday. This is a question mark kick special just because it will be really important to see both women on the scales exactly. I agree with you, though. I do like Alekseeva in this matchup because if this fight is primarily contested on the mat, which you would assume it's going to be, Alekseeva does have the threat of the submission just a little bit higher. Not that Dixon's a bad grappler by any means, but she's going to put herself in a lot of danger throughout this matchup. And even though she might win rounds because of it, I think she could get finished at any point throughout. So I've got Alekseeva, but it'll be an interesting fight.
Craig Allen, reading books that Canadians don't often read. Matt, both of us going with Irina Alekseeva to get the win in the matchup. Some big time fights in this card. The co-main event, Jennifer Maia is going to be fighting Viviane Araújo. You're not going to want to miss that. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.